With just 4 days left to go, Vice President Harris is using the last few days to campaign through the critical swing states. Today, Harris spent the entire day campaigning throughout Wisconsin in an effort to reach out to voters, specifically union workers in that state, to make the case why they should vote for her. While Harris is in Wisconsin, she's got folks in Michigan at the same time making the case for her. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York and Shawn Fain, who's president of United Auto Workers Union, which has endorsed the Harris-Walz ticket, are in Detroit, where they are speaking to voters today. They both join me tonight from Michigan in their first joint televised interview. It's great to have you guys on the program.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, it's great to be here.
First, just a Congresswoman, just like I've been doing this with everyone, just a vibe check for people. I've been in the studio, so I don't know what's going on. You tell me how it feels. I know you've been doing a ton of campaigning across the country. How are you feeling about things?
I mean, we know that this race is going to be very, very tight. But as I said, and as we talked about tonight at UAW, when it comes down to the margin of effort, I'm going to be on the side of UAW and working people every time. And so our side is working hard. Frankly, I'd rather be us right now, because we've got people who are really busting their behinds and knocking every single door out here in the city of Detroit.
You know, I was looking at data today, Shawn, about fundraising and spending, and I really think it hasn't quite sunk into people that 3 billionaires have given up almost $400 million, more than, if I've got this correct, all of the small dollar donations combined for Trump, to try to get him into office. And I want to play for you what one of them, Elon Musk, said about the living within our means and hardship that might be coming for people if Trump's elected. Take a listen.
We have to reduce spending to live within our means. Yeah, that necessarily involves some temporary hardship, but it will ensure long-term prosperity.
Are voters and the workers in your union hearing that from Elon Musk?
Well, I think he's got it backwards. We've been enduring long-term going backwards for decades due to the same policies that Trump's a champion for. And you know what you're talking about, the 3 billionaires that have given hundreds of millions of dollars to Trump's campaign. That's what this election's all about. You know, there's two very distinct differences here. You got two people in this race. Kamala Harris is one of us. She knows what work is. You know, she's worked at McDonald's. She didn't play dress up like Trump did. She's actually done it. You know, she's worked her way through the ranks. She's spent a lifetime serving people. Donald Trump has everything handed to him. He's a representative of the billionaire class. He doesn't give a damn about working class people, and that's what this is all about.
Congresswoman, sometimes it seems to me policy is sort of maddeningly remote from the discourse on the election. And there was a sort of amazing moment with a fellow member of the New York Congressional Caucus today, Brandon Williams, Republican, who's trying in a very contested race. The speaker came to his district, and he got asked about the CHIPS Act, bipartisan bill to put a lot of investment, including, I think, investment in that district for a big Micron new supercenter. The speaker says, I think Trump's probably going to try to repeal it, yes. Brandon Williams then has to get up and be like, no, we're good, CHIPS Act. Then afterwards, they have to put a statement out trying to walk it back. And I just thought it's so rare to see the actual policy here front and center in the campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, the CHIPS Act is not a remote and far away thing for workers in Buffalo or workers right here in Michigan that benefit from the manufacturing plants and the jobs, and especially the union jobs that result and are created that people can actually take and will help them, you know, put food on the table without having to work triple or double overtime in order to accomplish that. And so, you know, some people may hear CHIPS Act or some kind of vague policy, but people in Buffalo, people in upstate New York, people in Michigan, they hear about the plant that they work at. And when you have the Speaker of the House, the Republican Speaker of the House, roll up to Buffalo, New York, and say, we are going to shut down the plants that give you all your jobs, you better believe people know what he's talking about. And what I love about it, and what I would like to thank Speaker Johnson for, is his honesty and his forthrightness about what they plan to do with a Republican majority in the House of Representatives. And I want everyone in Buffalo to know you heard it straight from the horse's mouth, and we'll see exactly what happens happens if we allow a Republican majority in the House and a Donald Trump presidency.
Let me just, in case people think that I'm misstating this, because they are like moonwalking away from it right now, let me just play Mike Johnson answering the question. Sean, take a listen to this.
The former president has said that he doesn't support the CHIPS and Science Act. You voted against it. If you have a Republican majority in Congress and Trump in the White House, will you guys try to repeal that law?
I expect that we probably will, but we haven't developed that part of the agenda yet.
Brandon Williams in the background going, bro. And this, Sean, this really strikes me as an important part. It really does seem like the Biden-Harris administration, if you look at all the policy, there really has been a focus on investment, rebuilding the country's manufacturing base, good unionized jobs. And the Trump agenda, as far as I can tell, is like an enormous amount of tariffs and tax cuts for billionaires. And again, does that come through? Like, do you feel like when you talk to the people that are members of your union that they're aware of that, or does that seem remote?
Look, we've been with our campaign we've been running for the last few months. We've seen numbers drastically increase. A majority of our members already supported Kamala Harris, but it's went up by over 20% just in the last month, because we're putting that message out there. And, that's what this, again, Trump can't decide which side he's on. I mean, we know which side he's on, but, he can't make up his mind. At the Republican convention, he talked about, railed against the UAW for allowing electric vehicles. But then all of a sudden, Elon Musk gives him $45 million a month, and all of a sudden, he's for electric vehicles. These guys can't decide which side they're on or what they believe. It's what people pay them. That's what's going to force what they believe. So, Kamala Harris and with the Biden administration, they've invested in this nation. Donald Trump left workers behind when he was president. He did nothing to stop manufacturing plants leaving this country. With the Harris and Biden administration, we've seen a bigger investment in this country in manufacturing than I've ever seen in my lifetime. So, they walk the walk. Donald Trump is all talk.
And I think we've seen that, too, with Elon Musk. I mean, Donald Trump and Elon Musk went live together on a stream and joked about how they were going, not even joked, they were very serious about how you need to lay off union workers or any worker the moment you even sense the fact that they may want to organize for better wages and conditions in their workplace. Elon Musk is a union buster and Donald Trump is a scab. And the two of them put together cannot be put anywhere near any sort of influence in the White House. And on the note of Elon Musk talking about how we need to live within our means, suddenly I find it very interesting that does not apply to him with the billions of dollars in government contracts that he seeks to secure for himself and the billions of dollars in tax cuts that he seeks to exempt himself from paying to contribute for everyday people's schools, roads, bridges, and more. And you cannot try to influence American politics if you don't want to contribute to the everyday lives of American people. And to Elon Musk, we have one message, which is get your money out of politics. It's no good here.
Yeah, I will say you can try. The question is whether you can succeed. That's what we're going to find out. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Sean Fade, I appreciate you taking the time on a very busy evening. Thank you very much.
Wake up this morning and you look at the front of the top of Drudge, the Drudge Report, and which really, since the unfortunate demise of Twitter, of X, whatever you want to call it, the Drudge Report anymore.
It's
no, I mean, I've been on it every day, since 2009, 2010, and I can't believe it's just gotten so bad. It's just straight on disinformation. It's just
ugly images
just
pop up.
Turned into a terrible site. You can't really even get your news feed. So I deleted it from my phone, which is really unfortunate. Yeah. Because it's just been for a decade,
used to be your
well
news
over a
feed.
decade.
Yeah,
it's a go-to for a great news feed. But on the top, and guys, if we can screenshot Drudge and put it up, that'd be great. So this is where we end. Donald Trump, who began Donald Trump, who began his campaign saying, "I am your vengeance," shows at the end exactly what "I am your vengeance" means. And the Drudge Report, Trump calls for Cheney execution.
Yeah.
And he says that she should have 9 guns trained at her face. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her. Firing squad, obviously. And that's where we end. And, you know, Mika, it's... Well, it's more direct than if she had guns pointed at her. He actually says, let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her. 9 barrels shooting at her. This is his final pitch going into the final weekend of one of the most important campaigns. And a campaign that starts with "I am your retribution" ends with Liz Cheney needs to be in a firing squad with 9 barrels shooting at her. Let's take a look at the bite right now.
She's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. You know, when the guns are trained on her face. You know, they're all war hawks when they're sitting in Washington in a nice building saying, oh, gee, let's send 10,000 troops right into the mouth of the enemy. But she's a stupid person.
9 barrels shooting at her face. This is, again, I want the Wall Street Journal editorial page to look at this. Because, you know, we've been spending a lot of time, rightly, about the Washington Post bending to the will of Donald Trump, and the Los Angeles Times bending to the will of Donald Trump and actually banning, keep that up, actually banning, keep that up, please.
You will.
Actually banning editorials where their editorial team calls for Harris's selection. But let's go back to the Wall Street Journal, who I have noted, and I read to you every day, whether you want to hear it or not, because for most of the time, they have actually called out Donald Trump's excesses. But as we go to the final weeks of the campaign, Donald Trump goes on Bloomberg. He says the Wall Street Journal always gets it wrong, says he's going to talk to Murdoch, and then what happens? They start making fun of people who are concerned about Donald Trump and his calls for violence. They laugh and they jokingly say, this is again, after Donald Trump has attacked them and says he's having a meeting with Rupert Murdoch, they write an op-ed on an editorial on Monday talking about a fascist meme, as if saying, I'm going to use my military troops and I'm going to use my National Guard to attack my Democratic political opponents, as if that is a meme. And then a few days later, as if they haven't already humiliated themselves enough, Donald Trump keeps talking about violence against his political opponent. And they write another op-ed saying to all the billionaires reading and all of the guys driving around Maseratis who've doubled their fortunes while going to country clubs calling Kamala Harris a socialist, they double down and say there's nothing to see here. Why, the Democrats have been far worse. And then we see this. I wonder, does this, could we put this up again, please? I wonder, Wall Street Journal editorial page, does this look like a meme to you? Or does this look like something that you and the New York Times editorial page and the Washington Post editorial days in better days and every editorial page and every politician on the Republican side, the Democratic side, and independents would all come out speaking against this?
Right.
But you have preemptively capitulated to a man who you believe is going to win next Tuesday when many on his own side are panicking. They're panicking and saying, if we don't get more young men out, we are going to lose this race to Kamala Harris. But, Willie, let's just, again, look at this from 30,000 feet. And this is how Donald Trump ends his campaign, calling for 9 rifles aimed at Liz Cheney's face to shoot at her face. This is how Donald Trump is ending his campaign for president.
Yeah, it's a staggering moment here as we make the turn into the critical final weekend, and we can already anticipate. It's probably already happening what the response will be. Oh, he didn't mean that literally, right. Joe. Come on, you guys, you always blow these things out of proportion. How many times does he have to say things like this, though? It's not, you can't take these in a vacuum. You can look back to him saying that General Mark Milley deserved death for talking to China to reassure China in the moments after January 6, 2021. This kind of language he's used again and again, this kind of violent rhetoric about imprisoning opponents, about shutting down television networks, about people who cross him in any way deserving the worst kind of punishment. And what do we know about that? Maybe a flip comment to him, maybe something he was throwing off the cuff. Maybe he meant that she should go to war herself and stand there and feel what it's like to be in battle. But we know that his supporters take these signals literally, some of his supporters take these signals literally. See January 6th. So he stirs the pot, walks away, and lets hell break loose, as we saw on January the 6th.
Yeah, and, you know, Gene Robinson, as we look at this headline, and we see the clip, and I'll be glad to play the clip again if anybody at the Wall Street Journal editorial page wants to call it a meme, as we close the campaign. But, Gene Robinson, you have been reporting for decades, like most great journalists. You've spent your time in the London bureau as the Washington Post London bureau chief, as our friend Steve Ratner, but of course Murrow and others who've been through there. And it's that throughout your career has provided you a unique view at how the world looks at the United States. I'm going to ask Caddy in a second, but I just want to ask you your reaction to Donald Trump calling for Liz Cheney being shot in the face by 9 guns, 9 rifles in the closing weekend of the campaign. Not only what it says about where the Republican Party is in 2024, but also what it must look like to our allies in London, in Paris, in Madrid, in Warsaw, across the world.
Well, it looks completely insane to our allies across the world, and this is unprecedented, and this is, I'm so glad that we're focusing on this and spending some time on it, because this is not normal. This is not acceptable. This is so dangerous. And I just want to, I don't usually do a personal appeal, but I hope my friend Paul Gigot, who's the editor of the Wall Street Journal editorial pages, and is a friend of mine. Paul, are you watching this? Are you paying attention to this? Is this okay with you? Because I know it's not. Don't you have a responsibility to say that to your readers? This is absolutely beyond the pale. It's a direct threat, not 9 barrels pointed at her, 9 barrels shooting at her. This is just astonishing.
Gene, I second that plea for people like Paul Gigot and others to have the strength that they need to step up, for people at the Washington Post to step up. Liz Cheney just posted a response. This is how dictators destroy free nations. They threaten those who speak against them with death. We cannot entrust our country and our freedom to a petty, vindictive, cruel, unstable man who wants to be a tyrant. Hashtag women will not be silenced. Hashtag vote Kamala. And Joe, to Willie's point, so many people will cast this off as you guys. He doesn't mean it. Who in your life, I ask to the people who say you guys, who in your life would you allow to speak that way? Let alone someone that you would vote for president just to speak that way.
What politician
and
would be allowed
your term,
to
Joe,
speak
I love
this
your
way?
term about these billionaires and these newspapers and the Wall Street Journal preemptively capitulating, trading on America.
And with the Wall Street Journal, they actually capitulated after Donald Trump attacked them.
Yeah.
At Bloomberg.
They caved.
Trump goes, oh, I'm going to talk to their boss. I'm going to talk to Murdoch. And then, Gene, we get that. Now, listen, I talk about New York Times articles all the time because I read the New York Times every day. I talk about the Wall Street Journal editorial page because I read it every day because it matters. And what you said about Paul Gigot, I have been reading Paul Gigot in the Wall Street Journal editorial page like for 40 years. When I was campaigning as a 29-year-old, everybody was getting faxes from the NRCC. Not me. I would take the Wall Street Journal editorial page and I would carry it around the district. I would read it. I would go out. I would give speeches. And, you know, you look at a lot of issues. I disagree with them on a lot of issues, on taxes, carried interest taxes for billionaires, tax cuts, and all of that stuff. But I will say Paul Gigot's page has not disappointed me so many times where they've spoken out against the big lie. They've spoken out against Donald Trump's call for violence. But that's just filler right now compared to where we are in the final stretch of this campaign. And I do want to say to everybody that is out there that is foaming at the mouth and thinking we have to capitulate to Donald Trump. We have to. I want you to know Wednesday morning will come. Wednesday morning will come. This election will be over. And whether it's next Wednesday or the following Wednesday, that day will come. But your words will remain. The actions at the Washington Post leadership will remain. What's happening at the LA Times will remain a stain. And Gene, I want to go back because I've got great respect for him, and I always have. I look at what the Wall Street Journal editorial page has done, talking about a, quote, fascist meme. I see what Dan Henninger writes, going, oh, are Democrats really going to kill Donald Trump? Like, Democrats are worse than Republicans. They know that is a lie. And now, again, let's put Drudge up here again for people just waking up, because they wouldn't believe it if we said it.
Yeah.
And we'll play the video again for all the doubting Thomases out there that are going, oh, Joe. You know, that's what Obama people would always say to me. I go like, hey, listen, I think it's a really bad time. There's a much smaller things. But I'd say, I think it's a really bad idea for you to fill in the blank. They'd be like, oh, Joe, oh, Joe. So condescending. And then 3 months later, they go, oh, boy, we should have listened to you. Well, here, it's Trump people. Oh, Joe, you and your fascist meme. But, Gene, you're friends with Paul.
Yeah.
I've had great respect for Paul for such a long time.
Yeah.
And to minimize this seems to me doing a grave disservice to those readers and to all of America.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, just quickly on the fascist meme, it's not lefty press that called Donald Trump a fascist. It was General Milley and General Kelly, right? Two of the most decorated and bravest warriors who worked very closely with him, and that's the conclusion they reached from having worked with him in the first Trump administration. And so that's not a meme. Those are facts. This is what these very distinguished military men have to say. And again, you're absolutely right. The Wall Street Journal has called out Trump's nonsense about the big lie, about some of his economic policies. They've been brave until the end.
Yeah.
And now the rubber is hitting the road.
You know,
and all of a sudden, it's all okay.
No, there's still time for these papers to step up and do the right thing, perhaps at the peril of their own jobs. Mm-hmm. Because I wouldn't put behind, I mean, if we're looking at a descent into fascism, which right now, the things Donald Trump is saying and doing parallel exactly fascism, not hyperbole. So there is time to step up, because part of it is destroying things, destroying the very things that perhaps are beacons of truth. Yeah. So be careful, Washington Post.
And remember,
be careful,
and remember
LA
who
Times.
Liz Cheney is, by the way.
Be careful,
Yeah.
Wall Street Journal, because I think your very existence is the problem here. Now Washington Post is losing readers. I'm coming, Joe. And that may be the very much exactly what is going on here. Ultimately, you've got to think ahead.
With the 4 days left, over 65 million Americans have now voted. That's 41% of the 2020 electorate. That's a lot. Trump's in Michigan and Wisconsin. Harris holding a rally there as well. And we know these final weekends usually are about mobilization or finishing touches on closing arguments that have already been made. But that's not how Trump's doing it. He is closing with violent rhetoric directed at his critic, his political opponent, Liz Cheney. Now, Trump himself, I want to begin by reminding everyone, he was terribly targeted by attempted assassinations this year. Authorities did not conclude the motivations, the formal motives of those attackers, and we've been covering all that. I'm sure you remember it. It was Donald Trump and his allies who, at that time, around those terrible assassinations, loudly denounced just even strong language or criticism from Democrats. And they argued, without evidence, that even criticizing, say, Trump's efforts to steal elections as autocratic, that itself, they argued, contributed to a violent climate. So Donald Trump's new remarks, which you're about to see and you may have heard about, completely hypocritically contradict his own supposed calls to cool the rhetoric, which were then obviously selective, and very clearly you'll see why they were and are now. But Trump, his attack here, what he's doing, can't be normalized or treated as just one more closing argument. It raises very real concerns of security and of criminal law about his effort to publicly foment violence as he talks about putting Liz Cheney before a shooting squad.
Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay?
Liz Cheney is saying today, this is how dictators destroy free nations. They threaten those who speak against them with death.
You know, when the guns are trained on her face.
Representative Cheney is a true patriot who has shown extraordinary courage in putting country above party.
But she's a stupid person.
Trump is increasingly, however, someone who considers his political opponents the enemy, is permanently out for revenge, and is increasingly unstable and unhinged.
Trump has made other statements that his fans have very famously responded to with violence. That includes the whole January 6th debacle and insurrection after he lost the last election. It's all around the election times we see this get the worst around him. There's a prosecutor tonight, I can report, that is already beginning a probe legally into whether Donald Trump has broken another law. He was convicted in New York of one. He has other trials. And these laws, you might remember, when he's accused of breaking them, are usually around illicit efforts to hold, take, or steal power. This is an election law violation here about whether he is basically issuing a public death threat pursuant to his electoral goals going into this weekend in Arizona. So that's Trump's focus, while Harris is running on turning the page on exactly that kind of conduct and pitching freedom and a working class agenda. With all that in mind, what do you see right now going into Tuesday?
Well, I don't want to jinx it. I'm trying to hold myself back a bit because I think I know what's going on. Just look at the early voting. Women showing up at 10 percentage points higher than men to vote. Donald Trump has accused us on the other side here of controlling the weather. I started writing a note to him that I was going to post saying, Donald, you're right. We do control the weather. And what's going to happen on Tuesday is going to be a blue tsunami. And I don't think you really see it coming. And part of it is of your own making. But a large part of it is that the women of America are going to show up, are already showing up in early voting by the millions, by the tens of millions. And so I'm extremely optimistic, but I'm afraid to say that because, and I don't know if you can hear this out the window here, somebody is letting off fireworks outside.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't hear it.
Well, what I wanted to say to them is if you're doing that because you're hopeful about Tuesday in a good way, there's no touchdown dance, end zone dance on the 2-yard line. We have to get through this weekend, right. Monday and Tuesday. Everybody has to do what they're going to do this weekend. We are knocking on doors. We are making phone calls. I am getting out my contact list on my iPhone, and I'm scrolling down every day this weekend and on Monday to see who I know and who I think, you know what, I need to remind them not only to vote, but to where to vote. Don't vote third party, for God's sake. Don't do that this time. And it's, yes, we live in 330 million people. We need more than 2 parties to cover the broad spectrum of political thought in this country. But we haven't done that. Yeah. We haven't created a system.
Let me show you. I'm going to jump in, Michael. Let me show you Michigan in 2016, where the Democrats spent less time there and Trump won. People in politics remember that.
Yeah.
They don't.
No time.
Yeah, no time. They don't always remember that out of those over 4.5 million votes, I have the Trump margin up on the screen. I did this the other day with the Biden margin. The point is the same in both. It's barely a bar because it was so slight. 11,000 out of 4.8 million votes. That is what Michigan was in 2016 when he did win the Electoral College. You mentioned early voting. Michigan has over a third of registered voters. That's the entire possible electorate there. Has already voted, and we're over 60 million nationwide. So do you expect, with even high women's turnout, close margins that could swing either way?
Well, I guess anything can happen, and I know I probably should stick to the script and say yes, it's a very close election, and anything can happen, and it's really tight. And yet, I know what my heart is saying, and I'm out enough, and I'm around people enough. And it was this way back in 2016 when I tried to warn people that Trump was going to win this. And it's very hard. I mean, I've spent a lot of my life trying to warn people that we're not going to find weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. General Motors is going to go under. I mean, you could just look at my work, and it's like nonstop. And then I have to deal with being booed off the stage at the Oscars for saying that, there weren't going to be these weapons of mass destruction. So I'm used to this. It's okay. But I don't want people to think that they can't work.
What's your heart tell you? Well, what's your heart tell you?
I know. I heard you. My heart tells me that we're in for a very great and historic moment, one that should make all of us who care about this country and who love it very emotional, in the sense that we've pulled this off. That we are better than what we've seen in that reel that you ran. We are a good people, and we are a decent people, and we the great thing, especially about Kamala Harris, is that, and what I want to say to Republicans who are watching, or people who maybe are not going to vote for her, that the things that she's fighting for, improved Social Security, improved Obamacare, a ban on assault weapons, protecting women's reproductive rights. She's not just doing that for Democrats. She's doing that for you, all of us. Everybody is going to benefit from a Harris-Walz presidency. And just the thought of that, and that it's so selfless. It's not just about me. What can we get? What can we give the rich for more tax cuts, whatever? It's about the people and everybody getting a fair shake. Everybody having a seat at the table, and everybody gets a slice of the pie. That's what we stand for. That's the America we want to live in. I just saw the statistic today. It said 72% of us do not own a gun. Do not own a gun. That's who we are. People in other countries think we're a bunch of gun nuts because we have these horrific mass slayings. And of course, I've done my own work about this. But the good news is, at our core, in that heart, we know the country we want to live in, and we want everybody to have that fair shake. And so I'm extremely hopeful. And I think I might have said maybe a month or two ago, way too early to you, that we have the potential of seeing a possible modern day, not the old school landslide back where you have 60% of the vote, but we have a chance to see a 55-42.
Joining us now is Jen Easterly, Director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, known as CISA. Jen, let's talk about this, because now there's reporting that there is going to be another instance where there's an official assessment by our government, federally, that Russia put out another fake video, or I guess it's a fake video purporting ballots being ripped up in Pennsylvania County.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, great to be with you all. We are very shortly releasing another statement from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence and the FBI and CISA about this latest video that you mentioned, purporting to show Haitian immigrants voting in various counties in Georgia. When we first saw this video, the team came together to do a forensic analysis and an assessment, and we can definitively report that it is Russian produced and specifically designed to go viral to undermine American confidence in the security and integrity of our elections. And it's not a surprise, Andrea, because we have seen them doing this throughout the last several weeks and months. We expect this to go on in the coming days up to Election Day, and likely in the weeks and months afterwards. This is all about spewing disinformation designed to undermine trust in our elections and to sow partisan discord. And we cannot allow our foreign adversaries to have a vote in our democracy.
We know in these next 4 days that's not going to change. We know how much disinformation is out there. Have you changed the way that you address it? Have you found ways that are more effective than others to send the message? Of course, you can put a big sign on it that says disinformation or false, but it's already out there. It's already been shared, in many cases, millions of times.
You're absolutely right. There is a fire hose of disinformation that Americans have been subjected to. So it's not a surprise that there are some who question the integrity of our election processes. I can tell you from my perspective that our election infrastructure has never been more secure. So what we're doing about this fire hose of disinformation is we are flooding the zone with accurate information. And so we've been putting out information about how our foreign adversaries are specifically using tactics to try and undermine the integrity of our elections. We are putting out accurate information through our rumor versus reality website. But most importantly, we are pointing people to the experts, because when it comes to elections, it's those state and local election officials like Brad Raffensperger of Georgia who are the trusted experts. And so if anyone has questions about how your vote is protected or how you can have confidence that your vote will be counted as cast, it is those state and local election officials who are the best source.
I want to get back to disinformation for a moment and talk about free speech, because obviously it's our greatest strength here in this country, but it can also be used against us and become our greatest weakness. And that's what we're seeing with these foreign adversaries flooding our speech communities with disinformation. How do you get social media companies, get users to willingly combat this, take it down without breaching free speech? Is there a healthy balance there that can be achieved?
Yeah, well, you know, Katie, as a combat veteran, I've spent most of my life serving the American people. And of course, what makes us the greatest democracy are our freedoms, and protected speech is incredibly important. But what I will say is that it is incredibly irresponsible for anyone of power or influence, regardless of party or politics, to be spewing Russian propaganda designed to undermine American confidence in the security of our election. It's corrosive to our democracy. It does the work of our foreign adversaries for them, and it's leading to very real threats to election officials of both parties and their families. And so what we've been doing is ensuring that Americans understand where they can get that accurate information. And it's by going to state and local election officials. We're not going to be able to prevent this fire hose of information, but it can be overcome if we continue to flood the zone with accurate information.
Yeah, you got to get buy-in, though, from Americans. And sometimes it's hard to reach those Americans who maybe want to believe something that they see online, or Americans who might be benefiting from it. There was a story about the Republican who was working with Russia to put out fake information. But Jen, let's talk about, if you don't mind, just more broadly the security of our systems. There's been a lot of threats that have been reported toward polling workers. There was fire at a mail-in ballot drop box. How are you able to keep things secure from cyberspace and into the real world?
Yeah, it's a great question. And by the way, on all of the propaganda out there, you know, enragement equals engagement. And rage is interesting, facts are boring, but it's really incredibly important for Americans to understand the facts when it comes to the security of our election infrastructure. For the last 3+ years, I have been on the ground with state and local election officials of both parties. I know how tirelessly they work to ensure that every one of their citizens' votes are counted as cast. Now, why do I say that? The facts, Katie. First, voting machines not connected to the internet, so very hard to hack something that is completely offline. Secondly, over 97% paper ballots, including all the battleground states. That means there is a paper record that can be verified if there is any question about the outcome of the election. Finally, election officials have put in place multiple layers of safeguards, and that includes cybersecurity protections, physical access controls, pre-election testing of equipment, and post-election audits to protect that election infrastructure from compromise. So when I say that election infrastructure has never been more secure, that's why I say it. But we should all recognize that an event as complex as this one, where you have hundreds of thousands of election workers, tens of thousands of polling places, 150 million plus Americans voting, there are going to be things that go wrong. There could be the fires in the ballot boxes we saw in Washington and Portland, the fake videos that we're seeing, the fraudulent registrations. We know that these things are going to happen, and election officials have been preparing for them. They've been training and exercising. They know how to respond to them. The important things for Americans to understand is these incidents, while disruptive, will not impact votes that are cast being counted as cast. Election officials are ready to meet the moment on November 5th.